You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 299, and my name is Clark from 5cardguys.com and 5cardguys on Instagram, YouTube, and on Facebook. I'm doing a quick solo intro today because this will pretty much be our Fanatics Fest recap episode. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes off the top to give my general impressions of the show this year, but for the rest of the episode, I'll be playing back-to-back interviews I had with friends of our podcast in person in NYC at Fanatics Fest last week. The first guest is Brent Ware, aka at Deep Value Investor, who's been on the pod multiple times before. He now works for Fanatics Collect, so he was able to provide more insight into the show. And of course, we talked about scarcity versus grade of a card, something he's passionate about educating new collectors coming into the hobby, which makes total sense to me if you hear him out. So stay tuned for that. And afterwards, I met up with Paul Hickey of the Sports Card Strategy Show, who I've done several joint pods with. So it was good connecting with him again in person. And we talked a bit about the difference between the show last year versus this year. And we also talked about flipping some products to help pay for the trip to NYC, because New York certainly isn't cheap. And I think, you'll enjoy that conversation as well. But before we get into those two interviews, my initial thoughts on Fanatics Fest this year compared to last year's inaugural event was that the second year was much better. Not that the first year was bad, but for collectors, I did like the layout overall of how card vendors were more spaced out on the main exhibit floor. You still had the majority on one side, kind of like last year, but that was okay too, for me anyway, because then you could just stay in that one area for a while looking at different cards. The bigger card shops like Card Vault by Tom Brady or David Adams, they were closer to the sports fan experience side of the venue. So there was a lot of action there, a lot more noise, a lot louder. But I think that brought more exposure to sports fans, like regular casual sports fans, who definitely stumbled upon those card booths for the first time and possibly introduced them to the hobby at this show. I'm going to say it was also noticeably busier at this year's Fanatics Fest. And I believe they just released the numbers, which was that 125,000 people attended over the 3 days versus 70,000 last year. So that's quite a jump. So yeah, again, an excellent job of marketing the event by Fanatics, and perhaps moving the date up from August last year, if you guys remember, to June this year was the right move. And we talked about this before. It was primarily because you got 3 of the major leagues in the off season, so you could get more athletes coming to say hi and mingling with the fans at the event. Now, the big question is to see if this has any impact on the upcoming National in Chicago this year. And I bring this up because I heard a few people say that if they had to choose between going to Fanatics Fest next year versus the National, they were almost surprised to admit that they'd choose Fanatics Fest. Now, even Jeff Wilson seemed to be surprised when he said on social media that they made more money selling their products at this year's Fanatics Fest than at the National in previous years. Now, I'm still looking forward to going to the National for the first time this year, but I have a feeling I'll probably just choose one moving forward. It's a lot, for me at least, with the family to go back to back, but I've been lucky to do that this year. But I think moving forward, I'll probably just end up choosing one. And my experience at the National this coming August versus what I thought of Fanatics Fest already, having gone to it last week, that's probably going to be the deciding factor. And I'm telling you, Fanatics Fest was a blast. So kudos to Lance Fensterman and his team for putting on a great event. A couple things I would give as critical feedback maybe is the panels, the popular ones like the Shop Live that had LeBron James, Victor Wembanyama, Kai Cenat. Those kind of panels, they were at capacity very, very quickly. And I couldn't even get into a couple of them, even with my media pass, because there were just, the lineups were huge. And you had to definitely line up early. And really that means at least an hour of your time just waiting in line. So I don't know how they would improve on that, but that's one area that I would hope would change somehow. The second feedback is I wish I got a chance to check out some of the Fanatics games competition, which they kicked off this year. But maybe this is my fault, but I just didn't know where it was happening. I just knew it was between 12 and 3 p.m., but it was so busy and crowded at the event at that time. It was hard to tell who was actually participating and where they were participating exactly at any given moment. But really, that's about it. And two more awesome highlights. I can't forget to mention these. I did get to see celebrities and superstar athletes walk the floor just like last year. And it was cool that there were multiple stages where they could have different panel talks. I think that was a great idea. Although again, because there were so many people, you had to stand way in the back if you didn't wait a long time to try to get a seat up front. Honestly, I just thought of this. If the VIP tickets allowed for, special reserved seats, better seats at some of these panels, I think I'd pay for that. Of course, depending on how much the VIP tickets cost, but I think that would be a great perk. And I also did get to meet Gary Vaynerchuk, someone I admire professionally, and it was great to catch up with him briefly at the VFriends booth. I think he's a really humble and genuine guy. So yeah, big props to Gary V. One more thing. How can I forget? The exclusive drops this year. Travis Scott's Cactus Jack baseball cards. And they added a couple more. The Top Series 2 Fanatics Fest exclusive hobby box. And the F1 box. They were just a big hit. Like there was a lineup. And I thought the way they distributed the exclusive boxes through EQL before the show. And the way they were able to hand those out during allotted hours, I think that went very smoothly. I didn't have to wait in line that long at all. So I was lucky to get all three, and I ended up flipping all three of mine to David Adams, making almost $1,000 in profit. And I thought making the Top Series 2 Fanatics Fest exclusive blaster boxes more available to anyone who was at the show, I thought that was a great idea as well. Last year you had to stand in line to get the limited quantity, but I feel like they printed a lot more this year. And yes, you can't flip those for that much because there was certainly more supply, but it did give attendees a chance to get something that's exclusive only at the show. And if they ripped, they could try to get those Big Apple refractor or Swinging for the Stars insert cards that are only available in these Fanatics Fest exclusive boxes. And guess what? I ended up ripping one, and I got an orange refractor numbered 25. A Swinging for the Stars insert card of Mike Trout. And I filmed myself, put an IG reel out there. So if you follow me at 5cardguys, FIVECARDGUYS, you can see the hit that I got and how excited I was. And if you listen to the pod, me with the Mike Trout card is just meant to be. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thanks for listening. And like I said, I got 2 interviews you can tune into right now. First, here's one with Brent Ware, who is at Deep Value Investor. And then stick around for the interview with Paul Hickey to end this episode. Enjoy. All right, Brent, we finally meet in person.
We do.
This is fun. We're at Fanatics Fest 2025, New York City, Javits Center, of course, just like last year. And, loyal listeners of the pod will know who you are already because you've been a guest multiple times. And it's funny, we're going to talk about cards later, but I want to get your thoughts on the whole event. I thought you didn't come last year, but you did. So you can compare 2024 to 2025. Any differences, any similarities? What do you think about the vibe?
The first thing that stands out to me is how cards are more mingled into the show. Instead of cards being on the very end of the show and feeling a little separate from the show. It feels right now like, depending on where you enter the show, you're immediately have cards in front of you. Whether it's Tom Brady's card vault, whether it's Fanatics Collect, whether it's the tables that have cards set up, it feels like you can't miss the cards. You know, even on the other side of the show where there's not any card tables, there's cards for sale, there's cards being displayed. Also, the card museum downstairs is really, I mean, it is. If you want to know what Apex cards are, you go down there and take a look at the LeBron James. You take a look at the green PMG set that's down there. There's the Jordan green PMG, which I don't think I've ever seen in person, so this is my first time seeing it in person. Just amazing cards.
Massive, the Otani Superfractor, which I think
I saw a few of those in there.
Yeah, one of them sold on the Sotheby's auction. That was had a lot of publicity because of Fanatics.
Well, what I think is really cool too about that green PMG Jordan that's down there is I believe it's authentic altered. So it just shows that when a card is really special, the grade doesn't matter at all. To the point where it's just having that card. I don't care if a kid put a little green marker on it or trimmed a corner, it doesn't even matter. It's like a Honus Wagner. Just having the card is meaningful, and that's how I love to collect. So I appreciate that sort of thing. You know,
I'm going to segue right into it. I was going to save it to the end, but every time we talk about scarcity over grade. And I love how you kind of always tag me on examples.
I love it.
What's the latest one that you tagged me on? The Trout.
Oh,
the gold, right?
Yeah, so there was a 2009 Bowman Chrome Gold Mike Trout in an 8.5 that just sold for $19.5 on eBay. And then I took a look in a blue to 150 and a PSA 10 sold for around $40,000. So you could have bought two of the golds to 50 in the 8.5 for the price of one PSA 10 blue and to 150. And so it just always, I just love when you did that video a while back of, you know, imagine if we're kids and we're opening 2009 Bowman Chrome and you're opening a box over there and I'm opening a box over here and I pull two golds and you pull one blue and you convince me that your blue is in better condition than my golds and we trade. That's essentially what's happening right now in the sports card market. So it just always catches my eye and it just makes me feel like a little kid and, you know, playful about it. So I love sharing it with you.
And I love the examples that because it happens time and time again. That's the thing,
constantly.
Right?
Yeah. And so one of the things I try to help newer collectors coming to the space is, you know, if you're collecting vintage, if you're collecting the 70s and 80s before coming back into this hobby now, and you're not used to having serial number cards and parallel cards, you know, back then grade was the only thing that made a card rare or scarce. Now it feels a little bit like double dipping when you already have a card numbered to 5 or to 50 and it's already rare and scarce. And then you're going to overpay for a grade on a card that's not as rare and scarce because it's in great shape. So the complexity is fun. I love the complexity in modern collecting, but it can also be a little confusing for somebody because somebody coming in, for example, that Mike Trout, they see PSA 10, serial number to 150, that's a great card. But what I always recommend to people is when you see a high grade card like that, look and see, is there a parallel better than that you can get in any grade? And so I would have advised that client that paid $40 for the blue Trout, hey, what else could you get for $40? Could you get a 9.5 gold for $40K? You know, like let's look and see, is there an Apex card higher up on that parallel chain that you could actually get versus overspending for a grade on something that's not as rare or scarce?
Exactly. And I feel like it's just every time you come onto the pod, we'll keep talking about this until people start to learn, right? It's like my co-host Hyung, he, for the last 4 or 5 weeks on our pod, he always brings up Aaron Judge as undervalued. You know, all the attention's been on Otani, of course, deservedly. But he's going to say, I'm going to keep bringing this up until people see that Judge cards are so like incredibly priced, relatively speaking. But anyway, I love how you talk about scarcity over grade, which reminds me, and I don't think I have asked you this question before, but I've done like IG polls about one of ones. Okay, so the scarce of the scarce. Where do you stand on grading one of ones? Because one of one obviously is just as scarce as you can get, as rare as you can get. But with everything you just said, you know, do you need to add an element of grading or is it for other reasons you would grade a one of one for?
Well, I think a lot of this comes down to short term versus long term. So a lot of times I'll get an argument from somebody saying, hey, well, you know, I understand your strategy, I understand rarity and scarcity, and I get what you're saying, but the market doesn't seem to care sometimes. The market seems to just pay whatever for a PSA 10. And I always say to them, in the short term, I think that's probably true. That could be okay in the short term. If you're just buying a PSA 10 so you can resell it quickly because it's easy to resell, and you don't have to wait for somebody like me that's seeking rarity and scarcity in any grade, then it can make sense. But over the long term, that more rare and scarce card will always, I believe, will always end up being the better long-term play. And 101s, if a 101 grades a PSA 10, there's usually a premium over a 101 that grades a PSA 9. It's hard in similar players because you can't compare it to itself because it's one card. But what I'm saying is if it gets a 10 and it's a 101, there seems to be more excitement around it. I personally don't care what the grade is to some degree as long as it's not bent in half or a chunk of the corners missing. I love when a card's super rare and scarce like a 101 is a PSA 6 or PSA 7 because I know those guys are just seeking grade, might steer away from it, and I can get the card and get a great card. So I think you should always grade a 1 of 1. And, I like it because if it's not a PSA 10, then it gives me a better chance to get it for a lower price.
Okay, so anyone with a 1 of 1 should grade it. So if it's a lower grade, Brent's going to take advantage of that. Yeah,
but if it's a PSA 10, you will get a premium for it.
Brent's out of that, but someone else will pay for it.
I will avoid a PSA 10 101 a lot of times just because, I don't want to pay that extra premium for it because I don't really care what the grade of it is. It'd be like the green PMG Jordan. Would you really care if it's a 7 or a 5 or a 4? I wouldn't really care. So
makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good point you make. A lot of people are more in it for the short-term timeline.
Yeah.
So they're like PSA 10 or nothing.
Right, because they'll even tell you it's easier to sell a PSA 10.
Sure.
Versus, like I bought a red Bowman Chrome Mike Trout rookie that's the 5. I'd never seen one before, and it was a PSA 8. I was happy it was a PSA 8 because I didn't want to pay a premium for a PSA 10 grade. Yeah. And so it wiped out a lot of the demand side because it wasn't a PSA 10. Yeah. But I know it's the 5 and it's one of his best rookie cards. So I can come in and take advantage of a situation like that. And now I have a card that you never see that, nobody else can get.
Yeah, no, again, so going back to the card show and kind of tying this all together. Yeah. Have you had a chance to look at some of the cards that are out there and anything catch your eye?
I did have a chance to look around. There's a lot of great stuff out there. The museum downstairs was just like...
you got to check it out. It's
good.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's good because you get a chance to see what are true grails in the hobby.
Grails, yeah.
What are those true incredible cards that are rare and scarce that you cannot ever get your hands on. Yeah. And then you go out onto the show floor and it gives you an idea of when you're looking at just thousands and thousands of cards everywhere, which cards should I really be focused on? If this is my end goal to get into that green PMG Jordan, should I be looking at a green PMG in football set? Is there an opportunity to get a Marshall Falk and a green PMG for 10 or 20 grand, knowing that those Apex cards are green PMGs and Jordan's anchoring that set? So there's a lot of great cards out there, but that museum collection really kind of throws you off a little bit because when you're seeing super fractors of LeBron James, it's hard to go out and look at a 2003 base chrome rookie of LeBron James on the show floor. But there's a lot of great cards out there.
Yeah, and some of those cards in the museum, it's what I find fascinating is that it used to be in someone's normal everyday collection, and now it's in a exhibit essentially.
Yeah.
And think about 15, 20 years down the line. The things we're collecting now could be in one of these showcases.
So that's exactly what I was trying to get at, and you said it better than I did around have that mindset. What type of cards do you see in 10 or 20 years being in that museum? What types of cards do you see in 10 or 20 years headlining a massive premier auction? Those cards that just make you stop. And are you collecting too many cards when you could be collecting fewer, more special rare cards? And so I think that museum can just be a good, opportunity for people to walk through it and just get a feel for what are true great cards. Because sometimes I feel like there's too many cards right now that have value, if that makes sense. Right. There's just no way thousands and thousands and thousands of cards of a player can have so much value. Yeah. So that concerns me a little bit because I believe over time the Pareto distribution will kick in and fewer cards will have more and more of the value over time for any given player. So I try to focus on those cards that I think over time will continue to have more of the value. Just like art, very few pieces of art have all the value, and most art has very little value. So I try to think about that with cards.
It's essentially you got to see through the hype because a lot of these cards have value currently because of the hype, because of the awesome breaks. And, I love seeing a lot of super fractors get hit. We joke about how many one-of-ones are out there these days. Yeah. But, what card actually matters for that player.
Well, and it's exciting too, because if you can catch a player on a run, and if you can buy the card at the right time, and they have 2, 3, 4, 5 great seasons, I mean, you can have a lot of fun holding that card, watching that player, checking the box scores every day. Were they 2 for 4, 1 for 4, 0 for 5? You feel like your card went down in value. So like that can be a lot of fun, and it's a thrill because there's a lot of people, and like say if you're betting on sports, you just see win or lose. Yeah. If you buy a sports card, if the player doesn't do well, you still have the card. It's not going to be worth 0 the next day versus like a bet, it's worth 0. Like if you lose. So
yeah, and that applies to fantasy baseball. I used to be a hardcore fantasy player, and then when I got deeper into cards, I had less and less time for fantasy. Yeah, and like just more researching the cards. That for that reason you just mentioned, I like to hold and just kind of root for that player.
It's fun. Right? Yeah, like right now, I'm on pins and needles all the time, paying attention to the box scores of Julio Rodriguez because I have his Bowman Chrome Red to 5, and it can be stressful. I'm always checking to see how many times he struck out today.
I feel the same way about Mike Trout. Like, please hit another home run today. But
I know. I love that he's playing again, and he's semi-healthy. He's just in New York right now, and he had a home run yesterday. So
sweet.
Yeah, he's playing well.
I didn't catch up on the box score, but I love hearing that. Mm-hmm. Last thing I want to ask you, and we're talking about it off the air, but Fanatics Fest is unique in the sense that you just don't have a card show, you just don't have card collectors, but you have, obviously, we've seen a ton of diehard sports fans, just fans of particular sports. How do you see Fanatics Fest or events like this kind of introducing those sports fans to card collecting? Do you think that even in the next few years, the hobby will see a significant increase because of events like this?
Yeah, I believe that it's introducing sports cards as part of an overall sports culture. Like if you notice when you go out there, how often would you be able to be buying a sports card and then have Jay-Z up in his nightclub next to you? And it's like, it's a culture, like having First Take being filmed here, with Stephen A. Smith. Like it's just bringing it all a part of an ecosystem instead of being so isolated as just a card collector. It's a sports fan. If you think about, I meet a lot of people that either came from sports betting into card collecting, or they came from fantasy sports, like what you're talking about, into card collecting. And there's so many things that sports card collecting can play on within that. You can feel like you're getting a little betting on a player going on. You pay attention to the box scores like fantasy baseball. There's a culture aspect to it, so I believe that it's making it so where sports cards aren't just so isolated where, you're in a basement collecting by yourself and nobody knows what you're doing and they think you're weird. I'm noticing sports cards, they are, anytime I share with somebody about that I collect, they're genuinely interested. And they always tell me, this looks like art. Like a lot of people aren't used to seeing a card with an autograph and a game used patch on it in a slab and, being shiny, and they see it and they're like, I get it. Like this is cool. And and it's serial numbered. Like most people have no idea about that. So I think a show like this will just introduce more and more people into it. And it doesn't take that many people to come into this hobby and have it grow. Like you get a few whales of CEOs that decide they want to start collecting, and they throw a few $1 million into the hobby pot, and it can change things quickly.
I'm excited about the potential for all the reasons you stated, and I think it's still early because, to your point, I have a group of friends that still have this old image of what card collecting is. It's like, you do that? Okay, that's cool. That kind of look.
Well, and also if you think about like if you wanted to get into collecting art right now, like where would you start? And so one of the things I like to help clients with a lot of times is, there's so much complexity in modern collecting. Like where do you start? Which kind of cards do you buy? A lot of times they have no idea the difference in a sticker auto or not sticker auto. They have no idea in the difference in a faded auto versus a bold blue bright auto. Game used patch versus player worn. Which sets are the sets to collect? What's the likelihood of a player ending up becoming a Hall of Famer versus the hype? And so where I can come in and help people is just making that complexity easier for them so they don't come in and just, lose a lot of money on sports cards really quickly by buying the wrong cards and not understanding the complexity. So I love to help people with that so they stay, because I want to keep them in the hobby. I want them to stay in the hobby. I want them to buy the right cards, get excited about it, and then I'll just, how it is. Like once you get hooked into this hobby and you don't mess up a lot at the beginning, like we all do a little bit, but if you can stick around for a while, it's really sticky. People tend to, like, as soon as they get ingrained into it and they start coming to shows like this, they don't want to stop collecting. Because then you start making new friends. Like, you today. This is the first time I've met you in person. Immediately when I was walking down here, I was like, oh, there he is. Like it felt like I knew you.
Exactly.
But we've never actually met in person, and that's something that card collecting can bring too. That fantasy football never brought me when I played that. Sports betting never really brought me that kind of culture around people and making new friends. And, we would have never met before. So it's really cool.
I agree 100%. As you just heard, Brent is doing God's work by, educating people. And in some small way with our podcast, we're doing the same. But I agree with you 100% because, I said that we're still early where, in terms of the growth of where the hobby could be. But it is growing. Like I'm seeing that growth more and more each day. I came here with a friend who has never been to Fanatics Fest, got reintroduced to the local card shows all within a few years. And now he's like loving it, So, Brent, you and I, one person at a time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll do our best to grow the hobby together. So, Brent, it's been a blast. Glad to meet you in person. I know you're going to be on the pod later.
I hope so. I always consider it an honor to come on your pod. You guys, like I've said before, was one of the first podcasts I started listening to when I started finding sports card podcasts. And like I said, you guys talk a lot about baseball, which is cool. And at the time, there wasn't very many podcasts talking about baseball. And I've always felt like baseball was such an anchor of this hobby in this community. Some of the most passionate collectors that I run into that buy cards and then never sell them are baseball card collectors. So it's a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. All right, we got another fun guest. If you listen to the pod, my good friend, my good hobby friend, Paul Hickey. We've done several joint podcasts together, so it's kind of cool doing it in person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so, and I know we tried to meet up yesterday, but I was so busy. Yeah. So let's start there. We've both been to Fanatics Fest in 2024. Now we're back in 2025. Any differences you see, or the vibe different, or is this the same as you remember last year?
I mean, like you said, comparing Friday to Friday. Okay. Friday 2024, basically empty.
Right.
I literally went to someone's vendor table that wasn't even there, and I just pretended to be them, got my cards out, and was like a fake vendor. That's how empty it was. Yeah. And there wasn't even people buying my cards when I was a fake vendor.
Right. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, I did that. You know I'm ruthless.
Yes, you are. Scrappy, ruthless.
Maybe scrappy is a better word. I'm not really
you're not mean.
Or anything,
yeah, exactly.
But I look for the opportunity.
Sure.
And Friday 2025, packed, jam-packed. And I think that's great for the hobby. Positive takeaways, great for the hobby. I think it's last year, I think we all talked about, okay, this could be the beginning of a crossover where you have fans crossing over into hobbyists. Yes. This year, I'm seeing more signs of that. And just real quick, we can talk more about this if you want, segueing into card prices. That's another difference between this year and this year at Fanatics Fest 2025 and any other card show. What you're seeing is, the last card show I went to is Culture Collision, so I haven't been to a card show in about 6 months. But the prices at Culture Collision in January 2025, you could get stuff under comps, you could package stuff together to get it further under comps. It was more like a regular card show that we all expect. Bigger local card show. And I think even the national can be that, but this year's Fanatics Fest feels like it's purposely trying to not be that. It feels like every vendor has everything sticker priced 20 to 30% over comps. And not that they're not willing to come down, but it's almost like I don't see as many value boxes as you would expect. I don't see really any dollar boxes. So it has a higher end feel to the pricing and not as many deals on cards.
What do you think of this?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. I was super confused, maybe even a little frustrated yesterday. But we're talking on Saturday, day 2 of the show. We're halfway into the day, maybe less than halfway into the day. And I've heard that from the top, I don't want to say Michael Rubin said, because that's probably not true at all. But I've heard that vendors were asked to price, it wasn't written down, but there was a meeting of sorts. And vendors / breakers or whoever had to pay to set up. were asked to price things at a higher end because of the quote-unquote clientele that was going to be at an event like this. Maybe I'm inferring that could mean that it's in Manhattan. It could mean that there are parents bringing their kids to an event and they're not as familiar with cards. So they're not going to haggle like we are. They're not going to look for deals. They're going to say, okay, well, my kid wants this card. How much is it? I'll buy it. $70? That seems great. So I don't want to say what I really think this could mean in the future. I don't think we're going back to like 2020 or 2021 or anything like that. But what do you think? Do you think that, like, if that is true, and I don't know that it is, if that is true, could that mean that prices go up a little bit from that?
I'm glad you asked me that because on a previous pod, my friend Daryl, who's set up upstairs right now, we're talking about how he was preparing for Fanatics Fest, and compared to his experience last year at Fanatics Fest setting up, he just mentioned that a lot of the high-end cards weren't really transacting as readily as he would have expected at a big show like this. And we hypothesized that because there are so many sports fans, not card collectors, but sports fans that are just kind of stumbling upon the hobby in a sense, they might see the $2,000, $3,000 sticker price. They're like, okay, I didn't come here to spend $2,000 on a piece of cardboard that I had no idea what's going on at Fanatics Fest. I came here to see my favorite athlete. So maybe the smarter play for this year is to have actually lower to middle end cards for those parents that we're talking about. So it's funny how depending on the perspective, like maybe non-rookie MJ, lesser popular insert card for $50 to $100 might be more appealing to someone that just comes to your booth or where you're set up.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, 50 to 100? Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Right? Instead of like a PSA 8, 86 Fleer Michael Jordan rookie, right? Yeah. So I think hearing that, it's like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe there's a couple of things at play here that we're not totally aware of.
I think I think those are combining, like you're saying, where it's like I'm seeing definitely mid-range cards. Like it's not, I'm seeing like super high-end and people kind of showing off a little bit.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of mid-range cards. They're just priced too high. You know what I mean? Like,
I get it.
50, like it should be 50, but it's 80, or it should be 200, but it's 275.
Right.
Which drives people like us a little nuts because like we're not like we know what's up.
We know the comps.
That.
Yeah.
Like we look at comps, but like
Yes.
I've only bought 4 cards. 2 of them were like lower end Otani cards, and then one was a Wemby Topps Chrome base auto, 2023 Topps Chrome base auto. And I got all of them for slightly under comps. And then the 4th card I just bought today was a Topps Chrome. It's like I guess it's like kind of an insert within Topps Chrome called like the certified auto, and I got it in a PSA 10. And I looked up comps, and comps were they were between 14 and 1600, and I got it for 1300. So here I am saying everything, but I asked the guy like, where are you at on this? And he could kind of tell I was different than the guy standing next to me. The guy standing next to me was buying cards for his kids. So I'm watching this happen, and there's 2 kids probably 7, 8 years old, a boy and a girl. And they're like, I want this Cade Cunningham. I want this, I don't know what the other player was. And the dad was just like, sure, $70. And then like I look at the vendor and I'm like, where are you at on this? Like actually. And I couldn't find a comp. I'm like, and I said, do you have a comp on this? Which I think triggered him to say, okay, I'd be at 1300. So he came down for me. So it's just a different, like, I don't really see that at any other card shows, do you? Where it's like, I'm next to someone who's just like willing to pay whatever. It's like in any other card show, everyone is like comping everything out.
Agreed. And I think it speaks to what we're just talking about, that because Fanatics Fest isn't explicitly just a card show, you're going to have different kind of clientele, different kind of consumers. Yeah. And then you got to have like, use one side of the brain for these kind of people, and then the other side for, this guy's, Paul Hickey's a card collector.
So maybe I shouldn't be frustrated at the sticker prices. I should do more talking to the vendors. That's probably my takeaway.
That's the lesson we learned.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
But no, it's interesting. You bring that up. Other than just the busyness. We're talking off air how it seems a lot crazier this year. On IG, Fanatics Fest, their account just posted that the Saturday show, today's show, is completely sold out. I don't think it's sold out at all last year. Like, you still get tickets the day of. So the fact that it's sold out, I'm expecting a lot of people here later today.
Have they announced any numbers at all? Like what that actually means?
Not
I wonder
yet.
if they will. I wonder if they'll say.
Speaking of numbers, I went to the Michael Rubin, Travis Scott, Tom Brady panel yesterday, and they were talking about the art of collaboration and partnership. But it was interesting. Michael Rubin, I think he's just talking off the cuff, but he mentioned last year's Fanatics Fest lost $15 million, but he didn't see that as a detriment to, it was more of like, how many partnerships do we create because of the event? We're back bigger than ever this year, despite the fact that, the P&L shows 15 million under. So it's interesting. I don't know. Maybe.
It sounds like when I first started flipping cards. I lost 50 million
That's how we
my
all
first
felt.
3 years. And then I'm like, but I'm building something here.
The good
But that's
old,
interesting though.
Pandemic hype, but no, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the numbers will be afterwards. I don't know if we'll get that data.
I would love it if they, because we know they're competing with the National, right? I mean, that seems like what they're doing. I think maybe competing's the wrong word, but I think they're definitely trying to be different, but also compete a little bit. And so I wonder if they'll be like, hey, we've got this amount of people.
I don't know. I think at the same time we talked about how they can kind of work together, not like work together as partners, but the fact that what Fanatics Fest could be good at is introducing people to the hobby because of this kind of unique setup. And then people that are introduced to the hobby could be maybe not in August of this year, but the following year, if they get deeper into the hobby, like we both know how we can get deep into the hobby pretty quickly, they might be interesting to go into like a more of a dedicated card show like the National is, versus Fanatic Fest, which is part card show, part sports fan events, So I think it could work that way, but I don't think they're going to deliberately be partners.
Right, I agree. Together. I think that's a good point. So, one other thing that I like about this event is you can come in and get a lot of free stuff.
Yes.
I mean, you can get like free tennis rackets, you can get free chicken fingers, free Starbucks. I mean, you don't get to pick what you want. Like, you can't go up to Cane's and order what you want, but you can walk through the line. I mean, like, we talked about me being scrappy earlier. Like, I would literally, if I, say, needed to justify my little P&L for the trip, I would walk through the Cane's line 10 times and mark that as like, okay, well, that's probably saved me $50 in chicken fingers. Free chicken fingers.
I didn't know that. So after this pod, I'm going to go to Cane's and get a free lunch, right? But
you can play Pop-A-Shot at Starbucks and get a free cold brew.
Yeah. Oh, really?
You can literally get free tennis rackets mailed to your house from I forget the name of the company. But anyway.
A lot of free stuff. I got free headphones, wireless headphones.
Did you?
Yeah, just like you said, you scan the QR code, sign up for their newsletter.
Where
or
are
whatever.
the free headphones? We'll have to talk about that off the air.
It's like New York something. We'll talk about it.
I'm going to sell those on eBay, everybody.
Well, speaking of selling and flipping, we will be remiss if we didn't talk to the Sports Card Strategy host about flipping. And last year you sold the Cactus Jack.
Yes.
For a nice, tidy profit. And this year they had the Cactus Jack again. I got a box this year, luckily, unlike last year. And I flipped it for $1,100 to Dave & Adams. It cost about $500 retail. So I got a nice profit, but you did a little bit better. And then I was going to ask you on air, because there's a Fanatics Fest exclusive Top Series 2 baseball and the F1 exclusive box that was just released today. So what was your strategy for all three of those boxes? How did you do?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I was literally like one of the reasons I wanted to come back this year was because of those releases.
Exclusive drops,
because one of my best flips ever was the Cactus Jack box last year. I talked to you and Hyung about that, and so I was hoping they would do it again this year. They did. My strategy was, getting in the EQL, which for those of you that don't know is just the online way that they handled the organization for signing up, paying. They would pre-charge your credit card if you won the drawing, And I laugh with people about this who are outside of the hobby that ask me about this event, where you to buy a VIP pass, then you get the ability to win a drawing for the ability to then buy something. But the Cactus Jack box, to your point, was I think around $560 USD after taxes and fees and everything. And my strategy was to get the earliest pickup time, because typically that's when like the most hype is. So the earlier pickup time was between 10 a.m. and noon, and I got it. And credit to Dave and Adams, because my plan was to walk over to Dave and Adams and sell it to them immediately. Well, they did that so much last year that this year they had a sign up with what they're paying for it, which was very helpful. So it was $1,200 that they were paying for it at 10 a.m. There were people lined up already at like 9:30 trying to get it. So I got mine around maybe 10:30. There was a gentleman who was standing in front of Dave and Adams saying, "I will pay you $12.50." And I said, "Let's do that. That's $50 more." And so I literally held the box, and I take pride in this. I held the box of Cactus Jack cards for a total of maybe 90 seconds before I made $750-ish net profit. And the reason I like pointing out to people how long I held the box for is because I think sometimes, and you and I have hit on this a little bit in our joint pods, but sometimes like you'll make a play, but it's a lot of work. Like you might take a lot of time like packing and shipping a bunch of stuff if it's a bulk play, or you might hold on to a card for a long time so you have your money tied up in that play. The thing I like about the Cactus Jack is like, yes, I have to fly to New York to get it, but I'm here talking to you and other people, and it's a fun trip. But I get paid for like literally doing nothing, like clicking a button on a website and then walking 3 feet and getting $750 profit. So that's my favorite thing. The other two dropped today. I was able to get them both at the same time, package them together, sell them for $850 total, when all in on each I think was $670, something like that.
So you packaged it together and sold it to
another gentleman standing in front of Dave and Adams.
I have to go to like Dave and Adams. I'm gonna hang out at Dave and Adams. If you want a Top Series 2.
Dave and Adams is doing well buying a lot of these and selling them, but there are people standing in front of Dave and Adams offering $50 more, which I recommend finding those people, because that pays for the blaster boxes that we bought that nobody wants.
Right. Well, at least
that's not true. That's not true. People want them.
I could see. I was telling my friend that we bought 2 blaster boxes as well. I could see people wanting it that couldn't make it to New York.
Yeah.
So
for sure. There's a market for anything.
Yeah.
And to that point, like I was telling you off the air, my co-host on the Sports Card Strategy Show, Kendall Lefty McKee, who's a big baseball guy, he needs to meet you and Hyung in person. He is selling on eBay all of his VIP gift bag items one by one, which is hilarious. The little Fanatics pin that's in the gift bag, which I didn't think any human would ever want, I think has like $15 on it. The baseball has like, I don't know, $20 on it. So when you add all these things together, and this is how weird we are, Clark, there's free energy drinks being given out as you walk out of the arena. We're not selling them, but we are. Like, he wanted to buy a Celsius, which, I don't know, $5 here probably. Well, you didn't have to buy the Celsius because there's free energy drinks as he's walking out of the arena back to the hotel. So I said on your little profit and loss sheet, like, add $5. You didn't have to buy a Celsius.
That's hilarious. It goes all the way back to where we're talking about free stuff. Yep. If you're here, Fanatics,
that's right. Just full circle on the free stuff.
Yeah. No, it's. So I still have my Top Series 2 box. I still have my F1. So other than hanging out at Dave & Buster's hoping to get an extra $40, $50, I'm thinking of maybe it's there might be an eBay online play, because the profit isn't as big for those latter 2 boxes. And I think it's probably because the Cactus Jack is a lot more limited than the Top Series 2.
And I think something with the Cactus Jack is going on where dealers want them, like dealer tables want them, and I think they might be selling them to breakers.
Oh, I see.
I think.
That makes sense. That would make sense. always fun talking with Paul Hickey. Connecting with him. We've been busy a lot, like for the past month, so we couldn't.
It's my fault because we moved. We moved, which to any of you who've ever moved, now you get it. Why Clark and I haven't talked in a while.
It worked out because at the same time I'm just finishing up my basement renovation.
Okay.
So I'll have a new studio space once I furnish it.
Nice.
I'm going to buy, with the Cactus Jack profits, I'm going to get a nice desk and TV. So that's on my purchase list. So anyone that sees our StreamYard clips, you might see a new background soon from my end.
That's awesome. Clark, I admire you for many reasons. One of the many reasons I admire you is that you get a media pass for this event.
Yes.
And I forget to apply for that, so then I have to buy the VIP.
Yeah.
I reminded
you though, just FYI.
You did remind me this year, which I don't know what happened. And you were like, hey, you getting the media pass? I'm like, I already bought the stupid VIP thing. What reminded me of that is like you have more profits from the Cactus Jack box than I do. Right. Because I have to count my VIP pass as a cost.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know me, like you can tell, our show is very much about like profit and loss. So,
which, to be fair, a lot of people coming into the hobby, that's what they're interested in the most. So yeah. And then, other people are collecting, and I think that's why our joint pod works. We kind of, meet in the middle, so to speak.
And you guys are more entertaining and funny, and that helps too. So
we're just Canadian goofballs, so that's in our personalities, I guess. But
love it.
Yeah, thanks
Paul. For having me on.
Yeah, for sure, and we'll connect online soon, anyways. But
all right, Cards to the Moon, baby.
Sports Card Strategy Show. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.